All right, how you guys doing today? We're about to hop into a little reaction. First things first, though, man. Make sure you like that video. Hit a little exit full screen, scroll a bit, like it, and full screen it back up. You feel me? So the reason you're not getting the review of chapter 6 is because Pastor Paul decided to make the sermon about the end of chapter 6 and chapter 7. So on the review, it's going to be a review of both, or I can split it up, or regardless, I want to read chapter 7 before, and we'll figure out how to go from there. So I should do a reading of chapter 7. Hebrews 7 is 28 verses. I'm not reading that. I'm not going to lie. I'll read it on my own, and then we'll do the review. Should I? Not now. Maybe we'll do that next video. But for our video today, we have Answers in Genesis Canada, one of my favorite channels. We have confirmed dinosaurs and humans lived at the same time. Let's check it out.
Previously on Dealing with Dinosaurs on Noah's Ark, we began exploring several questions regarding how creatures could have possibly survived after the flood was over. And we'll now end by answering three big questions pertaining to where did dinosaurs go after the flood was over, in part 7 of Dealing with Dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. The fossil record bears tribute to the fact that many dinosaurs perished alongside billions of other creatures during the Genesis flood. But many people ask, where's the evidence that dinosaurs and people survived and coexisted after the deluge? One of the most obvious facts that can be offered is the sheer number of dragon legends that people groups from around the world have. These are so common and obviously problematic that evolutionists cannot easily dismiss them. In fact, no other than the renowned atheistic evolutionist Carl Sagan wrote an entire book titled Dragons of Eden that attempted to explain them away. Sagan recognized the descriptions in dragon legends are remarkably similar to dinosaurs, and he admitted that these similarities were probably no accident, saying, "The pervasiveness of dragon myths in the folk legends of many cultures is probably no accident. It's a worldwide phenomenon." And what was his explanation of why humans worldwide have claimed to have seen huge reptilian beasts in the past? The R complex is functioning in the dreams of humans. The dragons can be heard, hissing and rasping, and the dinosaurs thunder still. Notice Sagan's quote connects dragons to dinosaurs in the same sentence, using the terms interchangeably, intimating that whatever these creatures were, they were the same thing. However, Sagan's R-complex explanation was scientifically absurd, concluding that humans inherited memories of seeing dinosaurs from our far earlier, more primitive ancestors. According to Sagan's theory,
Not only that, but also the pervasiveness of flood stories as well. Like, we read Gilgamesh in one of my classes, and there was a deluge story about the entire world being flooded and one man having to save, I don't think it was every animal, but it might have been. It's been a little bit since we read it. But one man who survived, who the god said, you can survive the deluge, except in Babylonian mythology. Except in Babylonian mythology, that guy was seen as immortal, and they put him away on a faraway island. But nonetheless, the flood happened. And if you remember, the Babylonians had a big part in Jewish history as well. So if the Jews knew about Noah, the Babylonians, who by proxy were pretty close, would have stemmed off from Noah also, because he was the only one that survived, and so they would have also had a flood type story. And if they rejected God, which they did, then they would have to come up with their own theory, which is, you know, their gods in that story.
These non-human ancestors of ours from our far earlier, more primitive ancestors. According to Sagan's theory, these non-human ancestors of ours were so impressed with seeing dinosaurs that the memory of them was somehow imprinted into their DNA and passed on to us. Basically, these inherited memories are where dragon legends came from. Try convincing your local biology professor that the idea of inheriting memories seen by supposed millions of years old creatures is scientifically viable. You're likely to be taken about as seriously as a local fortune teller. To this day, evolutionists still don't have a good answer as to why people groups all over the world claim to have seen creatures resembling dinosaurs throughout history. Even the 1973 World Book Encyclopedia contained this entry under dragons. The dragons of legend are strangely like actual creatures that have lived in the past. They are much like the great reptiles, dinosaurs, which inhabited the earth long before man is supposed to have appeared on earth. For someone wondering why critics tend to mock the idea that references to dragons were in fact what we call dinosaurs today, no one could have explained it better than Bible skeptic Louis Jacobs, the former president of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology. In his book, Quest for the African Dinosaurs, he said, "Such an association would dispel an earth with vast antiquity. The entire history of creation, including the day of rest, could be accommodated in the 7 biblical days of the Genesis myth. Evolution would be vanquished." Indeed, Jacob's comment is the perfect summation. If humans saw dinosaurs, and they did, evolution is dead in the scummy water it was supposed to have been spawned from. And the plethora of dinosaur depictions demonstrating people did observe these creatures, found on tapestries, carvings, and engravings around the world, prove it. Indeed, just 3 such unique finds depicting sauropods clearly demonstrate humans witnessed live dinosaurs. How so? Well, one of the oldest Mesopotamian cylinder seals, cylinder-shaped seals rolled on clay to embed images. 2, an engraving on Richard Bell's tomb, Bishop of Carlisle, buried in Carlisle Cathedral in the UK. And 3, the Narmer Palette, a vase from the First Dynasty Egypt, and estimated to be from 3100 to 2890 BC. These all have creatures that the average child would readily recognize as looking similar to a sauropod, all having long necks and tails, etc. Most fascinatingly, all 3 show them with their long necks entwined. Each of these artifacts are separated in time by hundreds of years, and geographically by hundreds of miles from where each was created, by 3 separate and distinct people groups living at different times in history. And yet all 3 groups depicted these long-necked, long-tailed creatures, unlike any living animals today, in the same pose, as if performing the same activity, like giraffes necking. This is indeed strong evidence that people observed these creatures through time. The fact that these dragon legends are worldwide leads to another question. How did the dinosaurs?
Because yeah, why would people imagine these creatures? And I guess an easy push away would be, oh, if it's a different time at different places, maybe the descendants of over here went over there, and then it's different people, and they took the stories, and then they made the same art about these fictitious monsters, and they're like, bruh, come on now, come on.
And all of the other creatures get from the Ark legends are worldwide leads to another question. How did the dinosaurs and all of the other creatures get from the Ark to the far-flung reaches of the Earth after the flood, which would be practically impossible today? Are we really saying that kangaroos on the mountains of Ararat somehow hopped all the way to Australia, or that longnecks somehow strolled down to South Africa? The truth is, there aren't many details in the Bible on how these animals migrated. However, scientific research that's been done point to 2 main mechanisms for animal dispersion after the Ark landed. 1, post-flood environmental conditions, and 2, human behavior. First of all, while it's true that major bodies of water separate continents from one another today, even secular scientists agree that at one time, the oceans were much lower in the past during the height of the Ice Age. This would have required a massive amount of water removed from Earth's oceans through precipitation to provide for it, which would have lowered sea levels dramatically. A simple Google image search with a mix of keywords like extent of the Ice Age, world map, and ocean levels will reveal several depictions of the continents of the world as it is now, with an additional extended outline beyond where those continents are today, that depict how far they believe the continents would extend above water due to the lowered sea level at the time of the Ice Age.
They got Australia's Sahel. Look at the Patagonian ice sheet down here. That's kind of cool. Beringia connecting North America with Asia.
So the animals that populated the Earth far away from the mountainous region of Ararat, where Noah's Ark landed some 4,500 years ago, would have eventually been able to travel across land bridges for the most part. Although skeptics often mock the idea of creatures traveling such vast distances, we're talking hundreds of years of time and many generations of creatures, representing millions of offspring doing the trek incrementally, not all at once during a brief sprint. Because even small animals are quite capable of covering incredible distances. For example,
you ever seen a squirrel running? They know how to run.
When cane toads, not the spryest of God's creatures, were introduced into Australia with an initial population of 102, it only took 10 years for their population to spread a distance of 2,000 kilometers. These pesky toads now populate entire regions of the continent, estimating at over cane toads, not the spryest of God's creatures.
Why can't I find a definition for spryest? They're trying to give me priest. Active, okay.
Were introduced into Australia with an initial population of 102, it only took 10 years for their population to spread a distance of 2,000 kilometers. These pesky toads now populate entire regions of the continent, estimating at over 200 million strong today. Also, rabbits, not native to the Australian mainland before being introduced in 1859, spread across it completely in far less than one person's lifetime. So, fantastic powers aren't needed to explain animal dispersion, and they often use much less sophisticated methods of travel, like getting stranded on debris after a storm. Floating vegetation mats made of trees and other plants ripped up during the global flood could have also served as rafts to transport animals around the world.
My internet, my rules. My home from Verizon is internet made.
He put animals on a boat, and then animals got in their own boat. Also, I didn't even show you guys. Bro, my protein shake, it like spilled on me as I was coming home. I didn't want to take my shower yet because I was like, I want to record a video and get it edited. And also like be able to record 2 videos consecutively in different clothes rather than just this one shirt or the shirt I was going to wash and change into after in 2 videos. But anyway.
Now, regardless of the travel opportunities afforded to the majority of creatures that disembarked from Noah's Great Zoo, skeptics still try to marginalize the account by pointing to creatures like the platypus, for example, a creature they would say is far too small and fragile to have taken the trip of thousands of miles through the merciless deserts between northern Australia and Tasmania in the south. However, even ignoring a more circuitous route on vegetation mats as mentioned, platypus could have easily migrated through Australia when it was lush and green, as there's indisputable evidence that Australia's inland once had a thriving rainforest, which fits well with the history of a once saturated world having dried out after the flood. One criticism is that kangaroos couldn't have hopped to Australia because there's no fossils of kangaroos on the way. But that's predicated on the assumption that fossils inevitably form from animal populations, when in fact, fossilization requires sudden, rapid burial. Otherwise, the bones decompose before permineralization. For example, despite the fact that millions of rapid burial, otherwise the bones decompose their world having dried out after the flood. One criticism is that kangaroos couldn't have hopped to Australia because there's no fossils of kangaroos on the way. But that's predicated on the assumption that fossils inevitably form from animal populations, when in fact, fossilization requires sudden, rapid burial. Otherwise, the bones decompose before permineralization.
And I never put you guys onto my essay, but that's the same with jellyfish, right? You look up jellyfish, technically they evaporate before there's ever even a chance, right? They evaporate in like a few hours, if not like 1 hour. Their bodies will evaporate because they're mostly made up of water, and they'll leave behind a very shrivelous thing, if anything. 9 times out of 10, it can't be fossilized. Well, my bad. 9,000,000,100 billion times out of whatever, it will not fossilize. So the fact that there's been jellyfish fossils shown is great evidence for this worldwide flood. Or, you know, people could say like, oh, tsunami, or this, or that, but they're from all over the earth, just saying.
For example, despite the fact that millions of bison used to roam the prairies of North America, hardly any bison fossils are found there. Similarly, lion fossils are not found in Israel, although we know that they once lived there. For most people, it should be obvious that no individual dog, dinosaur, porcupine, pterodactyl, or platypus would have had to make the entire trip to various locations around the world. Overall, the key to understanding animal migration after the flood is simply the concept of slowly but surely. Each generation simply moved a little distance further than its parents had, given hundreds of years.
And that shouldn't be new to evolutionists. Oh, just a little bit more than the last generation. A little bit more, until we get from single-cell organisms to humans with consciousness.
Connected land masses at that time, and millions further than its parents had, given hundreds of years. Connected land masses at that time, and millions of individual offspring. It's more than reasonable to understand how they arrived and why there are dragon legends all over the world. And this, of course, leads us to our last question. Why did dinosaurs go extinct when all of the other animals survived? However, this is based on a misconception. Because of the various animal kinds Noah took on board the Ark about 4,500 years ago, not all survived. In fact, most have gone extinct. You see, when calculating the total number of these kinds that went on board the Ark, fossil families as well as living families are included, so as to understand which kinds existed at the time of the flood. And among mammals, for example, the families alive today only represent approximately 30% of the mammals that then existed, which means that around 70% of mammal families are now extinct. In other words, 70% of the kinds of mammals that Noah brought on board the Ark have since perished. Not extinction by virtue of burial in the flood, rather via extinction after the flood. And of course, in the case of dinosaurs, that appears to be 100% at this time, although we know the last of them died out fairly recently, as evidenced by the dragon legends referenced earlier. Creatures continue to go extinct all the time, all over the planet. However, I would venture the average person asked would say the giant asteroid theory as an answer to what caused dinosaur extinction.
Horrible theory.
As it's still the most commonly depicted in popular culture. However, if the dinosaurs, platypus, ducks, squirrels, beavers, etc. that we saw were all living together as evidenced by their fossils, shown in part 2 of this series, why would an asteroid impact only selectively kill the dinosaurs and not the other creatures, including their supposed evolutionary close cousins, the lizards and the crocodiles? The fact is, not one single event has ever been proposed by evolutionists that can completely explain dinosaur extinction, which is why there are several more extinction theories out there the average person is usually unaware of. Obviously, the various kinds of animals that exited the Ark faced serious challenges over the last 4,500 years. With their numbers greatly reduced following the flood, all animals would be subject to several factors making them vulnerable to extinction. Some may have had a unique physiology that made them less able to adapt as rapidly to the many different environments after the flood. For example, evolutionists have suggested that dinosaurs may not have been warm-blooded or cold-blooded, but something completely different from either. Which means they may have had a unique type of metabolism, unlike any living animal today. And for those looking for a unique or specific reason, one could conjecture that perhaps this contributed to them becoming extinct quicker than some of the other animals. But ultimately, they likely perished for the very same general reasons all of the other animals that are extinct today have, such as environmental pressures, genetic load, varying climates, disease, hunting, food shortages, predation, etc. In the beginning, God...
Facts. That'd be another reason that animals went cross country. Think about it. You get released off this boat with a whole bunch of dinosaurs, and you know you got fresh meat on you. You gotta run, gang. And then some of them creatures that probably weren't as fast got eaten up all by the dinosaurs at the same time. They went extinct. Everybody else ran super far away. They get to live. The dinosaurs now ain't got no food. They go extinct too.
God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1, verse 1. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Exodus 20, verse 11. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Hebrews 11, verse 7. As you can see, when you start from the truth of God's word and then put all of the evidence together, it's actually very easy to answer the common skeptical questions raised against trusting the authority of God's word regarding Noah's Ark, dinosaurs, and the flood. God made dinosaurs along with the rest of his creation around 6,000 years ago. We find their fossilized bones alongside those of other animals because of Noah's flood around 4,500 years ago. They lived after the flood, but gradually died out, like so many other animal kinds have. We hope you've enjoyed our Dealing with Dinosaurs on Noah's Ark series. And although we couldn't possibly answer every question someone might have, the most important thing to know is that there are answers when you're willing to look for them. Most importantly, we also hope you come to see there's absolutely no reason not to trust the Word of God from the very first verse.
See what I'm about to do? See what I'm about to do? Like the video. Like the video. Anyway, I really would love to hear his take on the Chicxulub crater. When you look it up, Google, there's a little asteroid thing coming down, because it's supposedly where the dinosaur asteroid hit. Blah 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 blah. You know, supposedly, right? And the reason that they think it's this is because there's a giant crater there, which I don't think is visible today. Like, yeah, you can't really see it today, right? But they also attribute this to the random little iridium layer that's all across the world. There's a little bit of iridium that's all over the world, even though in Psalms 104:9, who laid the foundations of the earth that it shouldn't be removed forever. It covered the deep as with a garment. It covered with the deep. What is the water called? A deep. The deep, the depths of subterranean waters, of sea, oceans, depth of a river, abyss, the grave. But notice how, like, dang near all of them is water, right? You cover them with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains, talking about the flood, stood above the mountains. At the rebuke, at thy rebuke, they fled, right? The voice of thunder, they hasted away, right? You told them to leave. They left. They go up by the mountains. They're up as tall as the mountains. They go down to the valleys. When you rebuke them, which you founded for them, you set a bound that they may not pass over, to not cover the earth again. If the flood is when this happened, then this is what this KT boundary is. It's all across the earth. It's an iridium layer, which is only really found in asteroids, the scientists will say. And guess what? This is God's bound that they may not pass over to cover the earth again. And he's talking about all this water. It's the flood. Boom. Don't really know what else you want, but you know, it is what it is. All right, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourselves a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.